Oh my gosh. It is Friday evening. What in the hell are you guys doing on this channel? Just kidding. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, JamesBFauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Friday evening. Yes, Friday. You guys never see me on an evening like this, but it is a special show. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is available. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there for Thursdays for the Savvy and JB show and Sundays for the JB show. And then here typically on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out with the algo. So thank you so very much for that. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So thank you very much for that. Also, I do video responses to your questions. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also send me a Q Bounty. Go ahead and go to qbounty.com/JBFaunt. It's basically like giving a super chat, but I give you a video response and you guys get the answers straight from me on camera. So you guys have that there. So thank you very much as well. And it's also the holidays. So if you guys would like to give a Patreon membership to any one of your family members to scare them by seeing this mug on their face, then you guys can also do that as well by going to patreon.com/JBFaunt/gifts. So you guys have that there. Now, while I would like to say my beautiful hellos and forehead kisses to all of you wonderful people, I am going to withhold that for a little bit because I do have a guest and I would like to be respectful of their time. So why are we here? Well, we have a guest. Her name is Madeline Pendleton. She is an activist, author, designer, worker owner, and myth and legend extraordinaire. Miss Madeline Pendleton, thank you so very much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I know we follow each other online, so it was really cool to be able to do this together.
Yeah, it is really awesome because one of the things that I was fascinated by was basically your story. Now, first, one of the things people are going to notice as soon as they go to your page is if they scroll down and go down to as far back as the beginning, it's like going through a rainbow because of the hair colors, they change and they go in the order of the rainbow. It's like red, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. And I'm just like, did she do this on purpose? Is this intentional? It's like, brilliant. Just like, wow, okay. I should have worn my rainbow tie, but yeah, I was feeling pink today. But yeah, was that intentional or is that just like I just did what I felt like doing?
Well, I like to change my hair a lot, but I never know what I want it to look like. So I just do the easiest next color and it ends up probably being a rainbow progression. I never thought of it because the colors feed into each other. So like the next color after this will probably be blue because it covers the color that I have now. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I think it is actually intentional and I didn't realize it.
Yeah. It's cool. One of the things I wanted to get into primarily was your hero origin story, because of course you are on the left like myself. I consider myself to be a communist.
Me too.
You too. Okay. So how did that come about? Because no one is ever born communist. Or technically, actually, we are. If you really want to get philosophical. But how did you get actively into that space, sociopolitically?
I think it started when I was really young, probably when I was around 13 years old, and it definitely started with the Communist Manifesto and with Angela Davis. I can't remember what I read first. It was either Women, Race, and Class, or it was the Communist Manifesto. And whatever one I read, the next one came shortly after. And once I started reading kind of political literature, I couldn't stop. By the time 2001 came around, I was maybe 14 years old, and obviously 9/11 happened. And the first thing I really wanted to do was understand why this happened, right? Why did this occur? And humorously enough, I was always like a punk kid, I was really into like subculture. And I also grew up kind of listening to nu metal. And one of my favorite nu metal bands was System of a Down. And I don't know if many people remember this, but the singer Serge, the day after 9/11, posted an essay on, I believe, the System of a Down website that explained politically exactly what the United States had been involved in the region that led to this occurring. And he faced massive backlash for it. But I read that on their website and I found that to be really interesting. And from there, I started trying to look into the role of American empire around the globe. And, as a teenager, I considered myself an anarcho-communist. Now I just consider myself a communist. I dropped that. But I was reading at the time, Noam Chomsky's work on foreign policy or Arundhati Roy's work on American empire. And those things, when I was young as a teenager, really informed kind of my political viewpoint. And I did a lot of anarchist organizing when I was younger and kind of found what I considered to be the limitations of anarchism as an ideology and a practical tool for helping people. So I ditched the anarcho part off the communism and went full-blown commie by the time I was in my early 20s and never looked back. And that's kind of how it started.
So that's pretty interesting. I remember, so 9/11 happened in my senior year. And when it happened, I was raised heavily religious. I was an evangelical for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah. But one of the things that it was reflective upon me was that in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is just means that God's going to step in and take care of everything because look at what's going on. And it wasn't the evangelical that the organization that I was a part of wasn't the kind that believed that Israel was going to do something horrible, and then next thing you know, that would cause the rapture and everybody goes up to heaven. Didn't believe in that. And in fact, the organization I was a part of, there were Palestinian, I was a Jehovah's Witness, and there are Palestinian Jehovah's Witnesses and there are Israeli Jehovah's Witnesses, and they actually have solidarity with one another. And they actually disagree with the strife and Zionism that puts them against one another. So that's the difference in the organization that I was a part of. But when 9/11 happened, it was just like, to us, it was like, is this Armageddon about to start? Like, that's what it was for us. So I didn't get my evolution till later. I got my evolution till 36, 37. I'm 40 now.
Wow.
And so you've had this knowledge for a lot longer than me. So are you now just saying in your head, finally, some of y'all are finally getting it? We've been waiting for you. Like, is that does that occur to you in your mind from time to time?
Well, it's hard because when I was first learning about all of this, I remember looking specifically at the work that the Black Panthers were doing. And I was like, this was the vanguard party. This has been the vanguard party that existed in the United States. When I look at all of American history of socialism and communism, the Black Panther Party is what stood out to me. Like, they were doing something, they were getting through to people. And to compare, the early 2000s to the era that gave us the Black Panther Party in all its glory before COINTELPRO systematically destroyed what beautiful movement was going on there, right? To me, I grew up thinking like, oh, people used to be so much more evolved. They were so much more ready to hear it. Everybody was more receptive to socialism. Like, I don't know that you could have a movement like the Black Panther Party today. And I think that was foolish and naive of me to think, because I think that you can have a vanguard party. You can have people interested in communism and socialism and a different way of doing things at any stage, right? Mm-hmm. So now I do feel like the political tide has shifted and people are once again interested in learning anti-imperial thought and theory. And I chalk a lot of that up to what's been going on in Palestine. I think a lot of people are learning about Western empire for the very first time. They're seeing what Israel is doing in Palestine and they're like, well, wait, why is this being allowed to happen? Why is the United States funding this? Where did Israel come from? How did this start? And it's causing them to really start to do this kind of anti-imperial work that I think makes them more susceptible to understanding the history of empire other places. So I definitely do think people are in a kind of one of those phases in history where something catastrophic is occurring that causes them to seek out more information. But I think that those phases, those like specific sticking points in history, happen and have happened throughout different eras. So I definitely feel like there's a lot of things I can say now that I wasn't able to say for 20 years because people are more ready to hear them. But I don't think it's the first time people have been ready to hear them in the United States where I live. I think in the past, we've had other times and periods like this where people were on board and were wanting to do that work. And, I think in a lot of cases, the US federal government was able to successfully squash a lot of those movements, which is why we don't have the legacy of them as prominent as maybe we would like to have that legacy here today. We don't have a lot of organizations that have been doing the work since the 1960s and are still around in the same glory they were back then, because COINTELPRO, the FBI, completely destroyed them intentionally, which is hard, because you have to start from the ground up to rebuild them again.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what the FBI actually did with the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement. And actually in about 10 days, they will actually go into sentencing for one of the lesser charges of them being unofficial, foreign agents, which is crazy because it's just like, wait, speaking out against imperialism and the US government makes you guilty for that. That's really a big free speech issue, and they can get up to 5 years in federal prison for that if they're found, guilty for that. And my thing is like, people, like, we're at a point right now where we're seeing the government for what it really is. We're seeing the system for what it really is. And now I think the people in the upper echelons of our economic hierarchy, I think they're now realizing that there is really a thirst for real, true freedom, both economic and personal freedom, especially since, a CEO got whacked. I actually want to talk to you about that as well, because a lot of people, and this is actually my first time talking about it on my channel. I actually talked about it last night on RBN, but a lot of people are now really in celebratory fashion, basically now talking about the system, and it's not just on the left. It's all over that I'm noticing. What I want to do first is to give everybody an overview who has not noticed. If you have been under a rock, is give you guys a quick overview. And I'm going to, with the help of my comrade Nick from RBN, he's going to give a quick hotspot, and then we'll come out on the other side.
Death Care CEO Brian Thompson was smoked in broad daylight, and the entire country proceeded to laugh and celebrate. Brian Thompson is absolute human scum who made his fortune denying Americans health care. Remember, my friends, health insurance companies make money every time they deny someone's claim. So the goal of a health insurance company is to deny as many people health care so they can maximize profit. And no one in the industry is as good at denying Americans health care than Brian Thompson. His company led the industry in rejected healthcare claims. According to old pre-COVID studies, over 68,000 Americans die each year because they don't have access to health care. People like Brian Thompson are the biggest criminals in our society. Most Americans do hard-working and honest jobs. Healthcare CEOs are parasitic leeches who make their fortune spreading misery and death. Brian Thompson got exactly what he deserved. And this story gets even spicier because the bullets that the assassin used to kill the Death Care CEO had encoded messages in them. Deny, defend, and oppose. was etched on the bullet that was used to kill the death care CEO. The assassin who killed Brian Thompson was apparently the fucking Riddler. What an absolute legend.
So I'm going to stop there because I don't know if we're going to get it copyright on the music, but just wanted to get your thoughts, especially about this story. And then also the outrage from some about the word Schadenfreude, I think it's called, in regards to it. What are your thoughts?
Well, okay. So one of the things that I think about a lot, like a lot, is this Columbia Mailman School of Public Health study that I believe took data from the year 2001. And basically these researchers were like, we think preventable deaths are very, very underreported in the United States. So they did this meta study. They used like multiple different studies, and they combed through all of the data and they compiled it. And what they found was that actually, when you take a look at the broad effects of things like poverty, discrimination, lack of healthcare access, lack of education, all these things that tie in to things like poverty and discrimination, they found that there were 800,000 people per year in the United States that actually were dying preventable deaths. And a lot of that had to do with things like healthcare access. So I cite this a lot when I talk to people, because you will always hear people want to say, well, like socialism, communism killed all these people. And not only are the statistics that people use when they talk about that often incorrect, right? It's from, the victims of communism, which we know is wildly debunked and often cites Nazis as victims of communism. They use all these totally inflated numbers that don't make sense. But when you look at this, you're like, well, capitalism, I know, kills nearly 1 million people in my country every single year. 800,000 people a year back in 2001, and we know income inequality has grown since then. So it's safe to assume that number has only gone up in the past 23 years. So when you look at something like this, just like, 68,000 people a year are dying because they don't have access to healthcare. And that's probably an underestimation based on that Columbia Mailman School of Health survey. That's a conservative estimate. These people are mass murderers. They are point blank. They are mass murderers. And I do not feel bad or sad when a mass murderer gets what's coming to them, and I think that's what we're all seeing. And this is really like when we talk about things that radicalize people, and we talk about how it's not just the left who's like, that guy got what was coming to him. We see that people from all range of political backgrounds understand morally and ethically something is askew with the American healthcare system every time they have to encounter it. And I remember seeing this man post online once a few years ago where he said, I'm done. I did everything you were supposed to do. I went to college. I got the degree. I got the good job. I bought a house. I got married. I had a family. I had health insurance through my good job. And guess what? My wife got cancer. We had to sell our house. We had to file bankruptcy to try to pay for her treatments, and she died, and we're broke. And I did everything they told me to do, and it wasn't enough to beat this system, because all it takes, most people know, is you or someone you love getting sick, and there's no way to keep up. So I think that regardless of most people's political affiliations, everyone can rally together on this issue of for-profit healthcare, because we all know somebody who has been killed by it. We all know somebody. So it's very personal, I think, to most Americans.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. Actually, I want to share this. Funny, we're talking about TikTok as well this evening, but this one.
I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but I do want to ask you, doesn't it feel good that this time it was one of them? Doesn't that just feel good? After years and years of it always being us, of it always being the common working person, this time, for once, it was one of them. And they're all online posting like, don't you understand how terrifying this is for us? And it's like, yeah, motherfucker. That terror you're feeling for the first time in decades, probably, if ever in your life, yeah, that's what we've been living with every single day of our lives. So the fact you're getting a goddamn taste of it, chef's kiss. And that feeling of celebration that we're all feeling right now, that joy that the person who deserved it got it for once, that could be every day. I don't know. You just got to ask yourself what kind of world you want to live in, right? I'm not.
So, your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's true. I think that we are so used to seeing the wealthy, the ruling class, get away with absolutely everything they want in this country. And healthcare in particular is really a sticking point, because when you think about how every other country is able to figure out healthcare, how Cuba, even at the face of all of these global embargoes, is able to have a relatively strong healthcare system, so good that they were able to export doctors to help other people. And we, the United States, within the imperial core, where we are benefiting from all of the riches we've stolen from every country around the world, we have these politicians who look us in the face and say, we can't afford to save you. We can't afford to give you healthcare, when all of these countries who are dealing with far worse than what the United States is, who are dealing with the United States, right? They're able to do it. So we're not stupid. Average Americans are not stupid. We look at that and we know it's a lie. We know they can afford it. We know they could do it if they wanted, and they just don't want to. So I think that it does feel good to have them be afraid for once, because I don't know a single person who's not afraid of what would happen if some sort of medical tragedy befell them. What would happen if they encountered some sort of physical ailment that meant that they could no longer work? Like, these are really day-to-day fears that almost every single person I know interacts with. And friends who are disabled, who are not able to work, what that struggle looks like for them, how frustrating it is for them just trying to get access to basic things for them to live. So I think that guy really hit the nail on the head, when it's like, it feels good for it not to be us for once, for it to be them, and for them to get what's coming to them. And I do think that the ruling class is only motivated by fear. I think that's the only thing that motivates them. So that's what they drive people to do. And that's kind of the thing about, like, the inevitability of how society will progress. Like, if you don't give people options, if you don't give people anything worth living for, what you've given people is nothing to lose.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because they are motivated by fear, so they push fear onto us because they think that we have to be motivated by fear in order to get things done. And it's like what, of course I was raised in, evangelical in that way. So I go back to what I was trained in. One quote from scripture is what you measure out, it will be measured back to you. You reap what you sow. So if you are sowing death and destruction, it's going to happen to you. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. So the thing is like, when I look at people like Brian Thompson, and he was part of the subsidiary of United Health Insurance. And the top guy actually put out a video talking about, the death of his colleague. If you're afraid now, I don't think it's the end. I honestly don't. I think there are going to be copycats. And if you're above a certain tax bracket,
yeah. I mean, there was this time period, I don't know if you remember this, where people were coming out with lists every year of the highest paid CEOs in the United States. This was around the Bernie era of politics. And during this time, CEOs started asking boards to pay them less so they weren't appearing on those lists, because people on those lists were being targeted just with harassment, not even threats of violence. So I remember people were like, you have to pay me less so I don't end up on that top 10 list or that top 20 list. I can't be the top 20 paid CEO. And thinking just about the effect that had on the wealthy, the ruling class, right? So like, think about what it looks like now to be like, well, I don't want to be next on a hit list for an angry American who knows I have it coming. Like, I can only imagine what the fallout and the implication of that will be.
Yeah. And when I think about it, because some people are like, well, taking out a CEO is not going to do anything. And I'm like, you're right. Because taking out one stormtrooper is not going to destroy the empire. Not even taking out the Death Star destroys the empire. You got to take out the emperor. And the thing is like, and for people, yes, that's a very nerdy reference from me, but it works. So, but I think ultimately it is now turning people's attention to systems instead of one person. And I think that's what helps, is that it's almost like a rallying cry, especially, the fact that 3 bullets were etched with defend, oppose, and deny. And I'm like, that's a message, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is. And I think you're right, because now all of a sudden people are talking about the healthcare system. People weren't talking about it for the past 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And now all of a sudden everybody's talking about universal healthcare. So it is, people see these things and it does turn their attention to the systems, exactly like you said. And people are now thinking about the healthcare system in the United States and how it is a system of death. These people profit from death. We've created a system where you profit from killing people. And I think that's what everybody's talking about now. So it did raise attention to that system.
Yeah, definitely. Now I want to move to the business model that you have, because I think you are a worker owner for a clothing company. Am I correct on that?
So yeah, technically we do things a little bit differently. So it is a clothing company, and technically we are registered as a regular LLC because the registrations are just like tax bracket registrations. So being registered as an LLC gives us access to funding in an easier way, because we do rely on some financing here and there, like any business would. And unfortunately, worker co-ops, it's very, very hard to access financing. And there's some other things that go into being legally designated as a worker co-op as well that the people on our team aren't particularly keen on right now. So we're on a 5-year plan to get the company to a point where we don't need to use any financing. And also by that time, hopefully the team is all comfortable legally signing on with full ownership. It's something I've been pushing them for years, but I'm the biggest commie in the room, and you can't force everybody who shows up to work to change their political system overnight and become educated. So it's a slow process. We're all working on it. So what we do to mitigate that is we have equity agreements for everybody on the team. So our team right now is 12 people. If you work at the company, every single person earns the exact same pay, regardless of your role. So me, as the person who's been at the company the longest, because I started it, I earn the exact same pay as our intern per day worked. So there's no difference in pay, and it's not a lot of pay. I often tell people, like, we earn $73,000 a year for full-time work. It's in Los Angeles where we live. I think HUD actually considers us low income, but it's enough to pay our bills and get by. And that's enough. And that's a thing that I think about a lot. It's like, by just taking enough, we're able to give other people enough as well. So our full-time kind of workload, we do a 4-day work week. That's considered full-time, and it's 28 hours a week. And we also have a break-even kind of goal at the end of the year with our sales. So we never try to create this profit. We certainly never try to create endless profit on top of last year's profit. We just try to break even after all of our expenses based on our income or sales. But when we do have profit, it's usually by accident, and then we distribute it amongst all the workers equally. So the thing we went viral for on the internet a couple of years ago when we did have profit is we all collectively voted on what to do with that profit, because we do have workplace democracy. Everybody gets to vote on big decisions, and everyone voted to buy new cars for everybody who worked there, because nobody had reliable modes of transportation at the time. So those are the kinds of things we do. So technically, legally, we are not a worker co-op yet, but there is all worker ownership via equity agreements at the company. So basically the company is valued at $0 because we don't profit, and profit is how most people evaluate companies, right? However, as like basically a formal technicality, if the business ever were to magically sell somehow, every single worker who works there would be entitled to an equal share based on the time that they've spent working there of the profit from that sale. And as it stands now, everybody is equally entitled to control and input and management of the business as they'd like, because we do have workplace democracy and people get to vote on things. And also a lot of people, it's remarkably horizontal or organizational structure. They just kind of self-manage. So that's kind of our setup at the company. And hopefully in 5 years' time, they'll all be on board to officially become part owners, and we won't need to rely on finance anymore because we would have built up a healthy reserve. But building up a healthy reserve means that we have to switch our business model to be more focused on a little bit of profit in the meantime. So that's the big switch we're focusing on at the moment that we've all been talking about. So just trying to build upward and onward and get to the point where we don't need to rely on outside funding.
That's pretty awesome. I also wanted you to talk about that because to anybody who is thinking about going into business, it's like, okay, can you gather some friends together and, you know, make a horizontal type of business structure so that you guys can all just come together like a community and just like build each other up? Because I think that's one of the best ways. Instead of using that know-how to be exploitative, you could be inclusive and communal when it comes to, it's almost like communal working, essentially, you know? And that's one thing I love, because everybody like talks about living on a commune, and I'm like, what about just having a work version of that?
That's very similar to what we do, honestly. The other thing we do is that we don't hire a lot. We don't have very high turnover.
I imagine.
Yeah, the company's been there for 13 years. And in that time, I believe total, we have lost 4 employees ever. Yeah, one was my boyfriend, and he just wanted to start his own company. One was somebody who moved away and they weren't interested in doing their job where they moved. I mean, it's like very minimal things like this, very unique situations. Yeah. So most of the people that are there, when we do decide to hire, which is very rare, we treat it more like we're looking for the right person, and you don't have to have any skills. We figure you come in, we'll teach you all the skills you need. And we really are looking for a person who has like a team player attitude, who is good at working in a group, who doesn't think that they're more important or better than the group. You know, somebody who's just willing to show up and do whatever needs to be done to keep things running. And that kind of approach has actually been, I think, really, really important to our hiring process, because the people who have not done well at the company, there are 2 people in particular for whom the model did not work. Both of them have the same personality trait, which is that they thought that they were, you know, really special. They thought that they were the person who kept the company running, and they were not able to really see themselves as part of the collective. So more than focusing on someone's resume or their background and skills, we focus on their outlook and their ideology. Like, are they able to kind of minimize their own importance and think about things from a group or team perspective? And that's what we find makes people thrive in this environment the best.
You know, and there's a really good point to that, because one thing I notice is that when you have ownership of something, the care and the consideration tends to be higher. And so if you're a worker, but you're also owner as well, then it's like you're more careful when it comes to customer service. You push more, you know, better customer service when it comes, because you know that that person coming in, that isn't just, you know, a operational expense that you get paid from. You're literally getting paid because of them. And that is also, and it's like, it's like, you know, the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And that village, once they start to raise that child, they all see that child as their own baby.
Yeah.
So it's the same way. It's like, if all the workers are worker owners, they see the business as their own baby. And they are all dedicated to it growing, not growing in a capitalist sense, but thriving in a sense where if I do well, Madeline's going to do well. If Madeline's going to do well, then this person's going to do well. And we all just rise together. It's the Chinese model in a sense, where it's like collective prosperity.
Yes.
That judges me so well, right?
Yeah, and that's totally what it is. And we do see that. Everybody at the company treats it like it's their own. And it's funny because sometimes people in the business will start maybe dating someone new or have a new friend. And when things are like, oh, we have this problem at work, or we're trying to figure out the solution, people will take it on. They'll really take it on, and they'll be stressed about it too. They'll be like, oh no, the economy's down. What's that going to mean for business? Or, you know, all these outside factors. How's it going to affect work? Or like, oh, cash flow is tight right now because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it'll be interesting because everybody at the business cares about these things, because everybody cares about it like it's their own, because they know it is, right? Like how well the business does, how poorly the business does, that affects all of us equally. So we often will hear when somebody starts dating somebody new, for example, their partner will be like, "Guy, your job is really intense. Why are you thinking about all of this stuff? Like, you should just show up and get a paycheck and go home." And then they have to stop and be like, "Well, no, it's not like that. It's not a normal job. Like, we all carry the stress when things are hard, and we all carry like the joy when things are successful and good, and we're all in it together." There was one person early on who joined in, and we were talking about like, well, maybe we could see if the business was valued at anything and then we could sell it, and everybody was kind of interested in that. And this is how we figured out the business was valued at $0 because we don't profit. But when we were shopping it around, somebody who was the newest to join the team was like, "Wait, this is wild. You're telling me that I would be paid out for a business I didn't start just because I worked here for a little bit?" And all of us were like, "Well, yes, because even though you didn't work here long, your labor helped contribute to making the business what it is today. And everybody who worked here, your labor made the business. So if the business were to sell, of course, we would all get paid out the same way because not one person's labor was more special than the others." And when we did the year where everybody got a car, I remember one employee was like, "You bought me a car," to me. And I was like, "I did not buy you a car. Your labor bought you a car. The company bought you a car, and your labor created the company. You bought yourself the car." So when people are new to the team, it takes some adjusting for them to really realize that it's like, no, this is you. Your work did this. And it's cool to see them kind of realize as time goes along, like, oh, this is me. My work did this. This is what happens when I care about my job, when I care about the business does well, and I do well, and we all do well. So like a great example of this is that one of our coworkers is like, "I think we all should be making $100,000 because inflation has been rough and things are really hard." And when she said that, everybody in the room was like, "Okay, what are we going to do to try to make $100,000 in the next 1 or 2 years? Like, let's all talk about that. How do we make that a reality? Because yeah, inflation is real and it's been a challenge. So let's plan for that." So it is really cool to watch people take ownership and get involved and really care about the business and try to fine tune and perfect their craft. And we see that everybody's always trying to fine tune and perfect things and find ways to do their jobs better and better and better. And I've never seen that in another company. I've also never seen an employee turnover as low as ours is in another company. People treat this like a lifelong job. And we also have a policy where we try to never fire anybody. Like, the way to get fired is everybody at work has to vote to fire you, basically. It's very Survivor, like voted off the island. We've never had to do that for anybody yet, though. Like, we don't view people as disposable. We view you as like a lifelong part of this team as long as you want to be. So I think it is really awesome. But yeah, people who are new to it or people who are like partners or friends on the outside, not really understanding, is always interesting because it takes time for them to really get in the headspace and get what's going on.
Madeline, like I tell you, this is the most wholesome business story I have ever heard in my life.
We try. It's not perfect. I don't want anybody to think that everything's perfect. We have our own problems for sure, but I think it is special and beautiful. And I think everybody who works there agrees.
Yeah. I mean, it's a privilege just hearing about it. And, maybe I hope I'm not being a little too forward when I say this, but I definitely wish you and your fellow worker owners all the success and thriving as possible. And I hope that this encourages other people to do what you're doing and it just grows. I hope it goes viral in a sense where everybody else around you starts doing it, because it's beautiful, and really you're building a sense of community while working, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, well, we would love it too, because we have to work with other businesses all the time. And we would love to find other businesses that run on a similar model or are, cooperatively owned that we can use and work with. Because right now it's even things like shipping supplies. You don't want to go to Uline to get your shipping supplies. If there's a worker owned shipping supply company, it's like, I want to know about these things so we can be using those. Right now, the closest we have is there's a worker-owned cafe down the street, and that's where everybody goes to get their coffee when they're on their breaks from work. But we need more of it, and we need to build these networks together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things I think that has really helped was the fact that you have over 1 million followers on TikTok. You have, this is how I found you. This is how many of us found you. As far as what's going on now, there is actually, let me go to your TikTok just to share everybody what your TikTok looks like. And so one of my questions is, with the TikTok ban looming over us, what has TikTok been for you and what does it mean for you? Because, I mean, honestly, you put out a ton of very good and vital and helpful information for a lot of us. So how does that help you so far?
Well, I think the thing that's really interesting about TikTok is I never set out to like get a large following on it. When TikTok popped up, I was like, okay, I do a lot of the marketing for the business. I should probably figure out how TikTok works so that I can figure out how to do things for our company's TikTok account. And I kind of accidentally started making videos that went viral. And that thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like there's certain times in history where people are more receptive to hearing kind of the truth about American empire, Western empire, propaganda that they're fed. I kind of found that we were in one of those moments, and people started really relating to the things I was talking about when I was talking about American propaganda, when I was talking about the CIA, when I was talking about our history of intervention and destabilization in other countries. And I found that TikTok could really be an excellent platform to educate people, and everybody's not ready for it. There are still people who push back because they're very, very committed to the propaganda version of events they've heard. But the number of people who have told me like, hey, your videos expanded my mind, or hey, I didn't know the US Agency for Global Media existed. And then I Googled it and looked into it. And now I understand that the United States has an entire propaganda network, an arm that we fund to spread this information. Hearing these types of things where people are actually learning from it, they are becoming enlightened from it, they are taking it upon themselves to do more research and look more into the things I'm saying. I think that has been the most beneficial part of TikTok for me. And for the business perspective, it's interesting because my personal TikTok, I don't think really translates into more sales for the business, because a lot of the people who want to shop at our business, they want to wear weird, cool fashion clothes. And a lot of the people who are drawn towards my page, I think, are people who have more political interests. So they're not always the same person. But what I accidentally stumbled upon with my own personal TikTok was a way to share information, to spread information, and to spread information that's counter-hegemonic. So many people, the only place they were able to get information before things like video streaming became so prevalent in your pocket is a news source that they knew, and they didn't even know, the New York Times, CNN, I don't know. And they got their news from this and they accepted that it was the truth. So now to hear the New York Times say something and then go on your phone and be like, well, wait a minute, I'm actually seeing this person here and they are living through the experience that the New York Times reported on. And they are saying what's happening is totally different than what the New York Times said. They're able to see that, and they're able to expand outside of their idea of what the news is, of what the truth is. And they're able to actually look at primary sources themselves. They don't need the newspapers or the news sources being the middleman to tell them what's going on. They're able to go straight to the primary source themselves. We see this especially with Palestine. They're able to go look at Palestinians, say, hey, this is what just happened to me. This is what we're living through. So I think that social media has been so important for so many people, for having different ways to engage with information in the world, where they're not at the whims of these corporate owned media outlets that have a history of being funded by the CIA, of being funded by the Defense Department. People are able to get news outside of that lens in a major way for the first time. Things that socialist groups, communist groups in the past, they used to have to create their own printing press and make, pamphlets and try to do all this work just getting the info out. Now you can just open up your phone and say, hey, this is what's going on over here. Hey, did you guys see the CIA just try to stage a color revolution in this country? Hey, if you look at the National Endowment for Democracy's website, you can see the grants that the US government is giving to all of these people who are spreading this info. Like, you can really get a lot of info out in a short and easy and captivating way. And it reaches people who you might not have been able to reach otherwise. It really is a tool for radicalization and a tool for information sharing and a way that people can learn. And I think that's been the most important part of it, the most powerful part of it for me, that people are receptive. They are out there, and some people want to know what's really going on. And if you make it easy for them to hear the info, they're going to be extremely receptive to it.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me share this as well. This is the article that talks about the TikTok ban that is actually up and coming on January 19th. It says the Federal Appeals Court upholds a law that could ban TikTok. The platform could be unavailable in the United States. Just a couple of paragraphs, says the panel of 3 federal appeals court judges just ruled unanimously Friday to uphold a law that could potentially ban TikTok in the United States. The legislation passed in April by Congress and signed into law by President Joe Biden requires TikTok Chinese owner ByteDance to sell it to an American owner by January 19th of 2025 or face an effective ban. It says in a majority opinion, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Court Circuit said that we recognize the decision has significant implications for TikTok and its users. If the platform does not divest, the court said it will effectively be unavailable in the United States, at least for a time. It says, consequently, TikTok's millions of users will need to find alternative media of communication. One of the things that a lot of people aren't really realizing is the fact that it's also going to harm a lot of business owners. It's going to harm a lot of people who make some money off of TikTok, who sell maybe products on TikTok Shop. Also, the hundreds, if not thousands, of families that are raising money for themselves who are going through hard times, especially families from Gaza that are also raising money from TikTok and directing people to their GoFundMes or crowdfunding sources. So this to me is really just the state itself by the hand of the corporations to squash dissent and a huge communication platform that's really been more worker-centered.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think there's 2 things here that stand out to me. The first is that we know that the federal government has been acutely aware that information spread on TikTok was a problem for the optics of Israel, of the US government's position on Israel. We know that people were going back and forth saying, why are, the trending videos on TikTok is people talking about how awful Israel is and how Palestinians are facing genocide. And they were really confused about that and trying to control that media narrative. And they weren't able to, because the thing about TikTok is you can't pay off millions of people sharing the same information. It's just logistically not possible, right? So when you have so many different people sharing this info, it's very decentralized, right? And it makes it harder for the US government to figure out how to attack it. So they have to attack TikTok, right? They have to go for the source. So that's one thing. We know that the US government has documented that they view it as a problem because it counters the hegemonic narrative of events that the government is using to try to push forward a lot of really unscrupulous policies. They want to trick Americans to think, oh, well, like Israel's actually sweet and innocent. They're the good guys and we need to support them because something bad's happening to them. And they're used to being able to tell the American public this. They've been telling us this for decades. And now to have the kids on your phone be like, I don't think so because I follow this family in Gaza and this is what they're going through. And I think that this is a lie and this is what's real. That's a problem for the US government because then they have to admit that our interest in Israel is in establishing a military base there that's hospitable to us acquiring oil and having, a way to attack our enemies closer to the source. We would have to admit that, and that's not a good look. So I think that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is that in my lifetime, the gig economy has shifted to be a lot of what I consider like a nouveau version of the cottage industry. We have a lot of people working from their homes. We have a lot of artists working from their homes because the idea of just having a good job, you just go out and you find a company and they hire you and you work there for your whole life and they pay you a living wage and you get health insurance and benefits. That doesn't exist anymore. Right. So a lot of people in our age range, in particular, millennials, people younger than us, Gen Z, they've been forced to engage in either the gig economy to survive or to go on the internet and try to work for themselves from home in this cottage industry model. And the internet is really their only form of marketing. It's the only way to make it happen. So you're right. You have a lot of self-employed people. You have a lot of artists who earn their living on TikTok because, let's face it, the reality of just going to try to get a good job isn't what it used to be. And when you take this from them, you are taking their livelihoods from them. You're taking their ability to reach an audience to try to sell a skill or a talent or a product that they are making. And that's a massive issue. It is a worker issue as well. So it's an issue of censorship, government censorship, and it is an issue of labor. It really, really is. And I know for us, that would be something at our business that would probably impact things in a major way to not have that vehicle. We spent the time and energy to build up that audience of people, and you think that you can reach them and they'll reliably be there so you can talk about your products and share them with them. And to hear that the US government can just come in and do something unilaterally like this, like demand that this, that a foreign owned company divest for American interests, and we know American political interests, it really goes to show you that under capitalism, the government and business is the same. And if you have a business that threatens the government, they're going to shut it down. And they are also never going to allow the government to threaten certain businesses. It's just a buddy system. It's like our version of a theocracy, but our belief is in the almighty dollar, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And, a lot of us now, because we could talk about these issues, which is very important. We go into all the issues with capitalism and we bring that to the fore. And one of the things I think is best, and, this was communicated to me by many people, is to talk about solutions, about what we can do in order to combat the empire, and we can do it through collective means. What solutions do you think would be the best for people? Because look, I foresee TikTok going dark, by the time Trump, has his inauguration. I don't see it having a turnaround. And so what type of solutions do you see that will be beneficial to us collectively in order to build more worker solidarity and do more out so that we can actually have something better in the future?
Well, I will say that this might be my age, but I come from an era of the internet where instead of having a few big social media platforms owned by major corporations, there was a network of smaller, more independent social media sites that were usually run by like one guy in his bedroom programming it for the love of it. Message board systems, I was a part of all sorts of these. So I think that number one, the most important thing we can remember is to connect with people on different social media platforms. If you find somebody whose information you think is important, make sure that you are following them, not just in one place, on multiple places, right? And also to pay attention to independent developers who are looking to build new social media sites that are maybe outside of this corporate umbrella. And they might not be as polished as what you're used to. They might not function as smoothly, but the benefit of those is that, they're not at the whims of a major corporation. And it just like, it's harder to shut down a million people on your phone telling you like, hey, what the New York Times reported about this incident isn't correct because I'm seeing it here. It's harder to shut down a network of hundreds of different social media sites where people are engaging with each other. And I think that that's really important to remember. This is something that you and I talked about before we came on live, but I'm really inspired by the work that Means TV is doing. They are a cooperative media company. They're doing great work as well. So there are alternative media sources that we can be using and we should be using to follow each other on. Obviously, you're going to spread more of a good message if you have a good audience, right? The larger the audience, the better. But in lieu of that, I think it is important to also utilize smaller audience bases, smaller platforms as best you can, and to really just kind of cross-share information. This is something I'm working on too. Don't just share it on TikTok. Like share it on YouTube, share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter, and share it on smaller sites if they pop up too. Do whatever you can to get this information out lots of different places. I think the most important thing is to remember that like nothing is going to be permanent. So you need to plan for its impermanence and to build networks everywhere you can constantly, and also to do things in real life as well. Although I will say the internet is such an easy way to connect with a huge range of people. You and I never would have connected in real life because we live across the country from each other. The internet brought us together. So I think there has to be a balance of both. But I do think, they can't shut down everything. So just keep on putting it out. That's all you can do.
Absolutely. And, a lot of times people use the word networking when it comes to business, but we can network when it comes to actually building community. I think that's the beautiful part about it.
I think so too. And I think that has been my favorite part of getting a large following on TikTok, has been being able to network with other communists, other socialists from different fields, from different backgrounds in different places around the country and even internationally. And that has been so vital to me in so many ways. It's been personally fulfilling, obviously, but it also is fulfilling in helping to further develop your politic, because the more you network with other people, the more you get perspectives on your ideologies that you share, right, that you might not have come to on your own. So that type of networking is, I think, really, really, really essential. Yeah, we can network to build a better community and a better future. It doesn't just have to be a LinkedIn style event where, you're doing it for corporations or to get hired somewhere. You can network for your own personal fulfillment too.
Yeah, I don't think that I think LinkedIn's a little quiet right now, especially with the CEOs. You know what I'm saying?
Everyone's probably trying to hide their job titles.
Like, no, I'm not a CEO. I'm just a chief financial officer.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. It's like if your title starts with a C, you better watch out.
Yeah.
Oh man. Also, let me just share with everybody. You are also an author.
Yes.
And so I want to share everybody your book. Your book is I Survived Capitalism, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. I love that.
Yeah, we try to talk about in the book, me and the editors, I talk about key principles of socialism and communism in the book while telling the story of my life. And it also tells the story of founding the business and how it kind of ended up from there. But I don't use any of the scary words. So we don't use the word socialism. We don't use the word communism, but I try to explain core principles related to those ideologies at different stages in my life. So if you like the book, you can also get it for free from your local library. Probably you can download the audiobook for free if you have Spotify Premium. So there are places to get a hold of it for free. And it's the story of my life, which I think I always say is a pretty unremarkable story. I think most people in our age range can relate to my story. And that's kind of what makes it important. It's an everyman story. It's not particularly unique or interesting. And how we ended up building the business that I currently work at and help run today.
Nice. Thank you so very much for that. Also, this comment, I love this. It's like, she's okay, guys. She turned down DNC money.
Yeah. I did. I turned down $13,500 from the DNC, and then
you blew the lid off of the DNC on TikTok, and everybody was like, "Wait a minute, what?" And some people got mad, and I'm just like,
yeah.
"No, she's not for genocide. Can you guys celebrate that?"
Yeah, no. The Democrats got very, very mad at me for that one. There was smear campaigns. People were making up all sorts of stories. It's funny though, because when people start running a smear campaign, they just start making up stories. And I'm looking at the lies about me come in, and I'm like, did you guys know I'm a landlord with a $15 million net worth who just died in a car accident? Because that's what the internet is saying about me, all because they are mad that I pointed out that the Democratic Party was trying to pay influencers and influencers weren't disclosing it. So yeah, that is true.
I can't wait until my Wikipedia finally comes up, because if I get a Wikipedia, people are going to say all kinds of crazy shit.
I mean, it's absolutely wild. It's seeing the types of misinfo. And I just have to remember that, like, the only people who are believing it are the people who are not in a place to receive actual information anyway. And hopefully the people who are actually interested in learning, like, the truth about things and assessing life through an analytical lens are able to see through that pretty quickly. They're like, okay, so you exposed the fact that the Democrats were paying people and they weren't citing that it was paid content. And now all of a sudden, all these high Democratic content creators with links to the Democratic Party are making up lies about you on the internet. That's a pretty cut and dry connection, I think, for most people to see. But it was alarming while it was happening. I was just like, what? All these people are so mad at me.
Yeah, definitely. So what I'm going to do for everybody who's watching, I'm also sharing Madeline's link tree in the chat as well. And I'll put it in the description so that you guys can go and also go to her TikTok, get her book, and also her podcast. You also have a podcast as well. And so it has a very interesting name. Let me make sure I get to it. Wait, where did it go?
Oh, did I take it off? It's Pick Me Up, I'm Scared is the name of the podcast. Yeah, and it's a podcast about American imperialism and labor issues.
Oh, that's why I okay, it's directly on your link tree. That's why I had it up. But yeah, it's called Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. I love that. So you actually have your podcast as well. And so look, I love this. I am definitely tuned in and locked in. So I appreciate you coming on because I just want everybody to be able to be encouraged to do more, not just organize on the ground, but also networking and growing. I want to start talking to people who are also doing like farming, things like that on the ground to help each other out and building, organizations. And I hope everything works out with you in regards to Means TV. They're great because they're doing really good work, anti-capitalist work with other channels on the ground. I know they work with JT Chapman, who is, Second Thought. So I, wish you all the best with them and working with them as well.
Yeah, I hope that we're able to work something out with them because that would be awesome. Thank you again so much for having me on. I love your work. I love, obviously, the Revolutionary Blackout Network work that I've been following for a while. Amazing. So I'm so happy to have been able to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Miss Madeline. And thank you so very much. And also give my love and shout out and greetings to all of your fellow worker owners at your clothing company.
I will. They will love it. I'll let them know. They will be so happy.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So that was Madeline Pendleton for the first time on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a really great conversation that we had. I've been wanting to have her on for a while. And I was like, look, hey, it's all or nothing. So I was like, hey, Friday night. All right, we're doing it. TGIF, baby. That's what we're doing. So I'm so glad and grateful that she was able to come on and have this conversation with me. What do you guys think about the conversation? I hope you guys also enjoyed it too. Because especially her business model was really interesting to me because I'm all for workers, having as much power as they possibly can. So you guys have access to her link tree there that you guys can see. You guys can email her. She has her Twitter, her TikTok, as well as Instagram. And then you guys get access to her book, podcast. And if you guys would like to become patrons on her Patreon, you also have that there as well. So thank you very much once again to Miss Madeline Pendleton for joining on this stream this evening. And she was very generous with her time because we actually went overtime. I was actually trying to do only 45 minutes and we actually went over. So very generous. Appreciate it. So while we're there, let's get into this. I want to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Also, did you guys like the stream yet? Go ahead and give us stream a like. We appreciate it very much for all of you tuning in on this Friday evening. I know some of you guys could be out having sushi or, racing go-karts, but you're here with me and it's a fun ride. All right, so if you guys have not, please go ahead and give me a like. Let me know in the chat if you give me a like so far. Or if you are watching this on the rewatch, in the comments, let me know that you like the stream. So thank you very much. Let's go to give a shout out to patrons first, and then we'll go into the chats to talk. All right, so let's go into the tiers. Thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this vital work of informing, inspiring, and encouraging our audience around the world. We have mega Jaybefaunters. super duper Jaybefaunters, super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, and then we have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And welcome and thank you to new member Carolyn Wansley. Thank you so very much. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. You guys literally keep the lights on. All right. And just to let you guys know, in addition to and furthermore, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you so very much for that. Now, let's get into the comments. Let me check on the Rumble side. Are we good on the Rumble side? Yes, we are. No Rumble rants there. All right, let's go into the Rockfin side. Let's see what people are saying over there. And then I also have an announcement that I need to make as well before we head on out, but I just want to make sure I get into that. Got it? Good. Okay. All right. And thank you very much, Dave Burt. Says, nice to see JB covering stuff here. I like JB's interviewing skill. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave. A lot of cottage industries, says the comment on Gaza, Israel, and TikTok to the cottage industries. She's a good speaker, I can see. Yes, very good speaker. Merger of corporations and governments on money terms. Mussolini's description of fascism. Also, I'm interested in solutions, and JB is right. I think Madeline saying boycott Google, Facebook, and other big tech. Thank you very much. Yeah, and turning down the DNC. Yeah, they're vicious out there. These political parties. The duopoly, I should say. Definitely vicious. Let's go into the comments in the chat. So, we have first. Comrade from RBN, Nick is saying, Madeline and JB, unexpected banger. Thank you so very much, Nick, for tuning in. Appreciate it very much. CBC voter coming in saying, happy Friday Fish Day. Are you frying fish? Let me know. Holla at me if you're frying some fish. I'll take some catfish, you know what I'm saying? Thank you. Andrew Dwyer says, getting ready to watch a Christmas movie. Ooh. Is it A Christmas Carol? Or what is it, that one with the little white kid with the glasses? A Christmas Story? Is that what it is? I think so. Yeah. I think I saw some of it. I never saw the entire thing, but I do remember that kid get his tongue stuck on the flagpole. Lordy Lord. I think one time I got my tongue stuck on a popsicle once. Slightly. Like, it happened at first because it was very cold. Anywho, yeah. Memories. Vincent says, hello, everyone. Good to see you, Vincent. Nice to have you in the chat. Hippie Punk says, love you, man. Really love your commentary on the book Laziness Does Not Exist. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Did you know that I had the author, Dr. Devon Price, on? Go ahead and look in the playlist. You guys can see that there. Thank you very much. We Need Critical Thinking says, Madeline Pendleton joins Jaybefaunt special. Yes. It was great, wasn't it? Great. Hippie Punk says, love you too, Madeline. Love your content on TikTok. Yeah. And thing is, she also, I wanted to get into this too, but she also does like financial advice from a left perspective. Right? And it's not like driving you to like do all this like exploitative investing and stuff like that. It's not. It's just like smart decisions, financial decisions while you're trying to survive the empire without exploiting other people. You know what I'm saying? It's great. And, you know, I think we need more people, you know, who are on the left who know about these things to voice things like that, you know, give us advice. So I love it. Mensa West says, I am willing to us to force the government to get what I want. Wow, what a great way to want to live. They're supposed to give us what we need, and it's supposed to be what we're supposed to do. The question is like, I gotta make sure I'm careful with my language here. What are we willing to do in order to have a system where we get to a point where we no longer have to make demands? We just have to tell the government what to do. And when we say jump, the government's supposed to say how high. It's completely flipped. The government tells us to jump and we say how high. We have to reverse that. Wadi Pilgrim says, hey, everybody, good to see you. Sorry if I'm a little subdued, is that I had dialysis today, so I'm not like full on JB. The tea does help, but I'm not like, but hopefully still a good show. All right. We have Rick Solis coming in saying, hey, Wadi, good to see you. Nick Solis. I'm so happy that Nick was able to tune in. If he's still tuning in, I hope so. Gio says, it really is, Nick. With the help of what happened in the past couple of days, I was finally able to get through my very liberal uncle. How did that go, Gio? Because one thing I noticed is that a lot of people who are also MAGA, they're fine with what happened. They're not mourning. They're not sad. They're not outraged. They're just like, all right. Do you think that this is going to be help a unification for the entire working class? Because that's what I'm wondering. Who knows? We'll see. Beastmaster says, hey, y'all. Hey, Beast. Growl. Gorzilla, sorry, bad with the name, but says communism didn't kill people. It was hierarchical corruption at the top. This can occur either in a capitalist or socialist communist countries. Sociological hierarchy destroys democratic process. It depends on which one you're talking about, as well as I think it depends on which country you're talking about, but for the most part, it was corruption, especially within the capitalist system, and their thwarting of socialist countries. So no country is actually communist. They're all socialist, and they are working towards being communist. But they have not truly achieved full communism, but they're using socialism as a vehicle in order to do so. And when you look at countries like, for instance, the former Soviet Union, even the CIA actually acknowledged that it was more of a horizontal type of governing that they had in there. They even said so as much, even, in response to Stalin and his administration. So, as far as socialist countries, most of the time, the failure is because of capitalist countries really placing barriers or roadblocks in front of them so that they fail. For instance, like, this Tuesday, I'll be having on a North Korea expert to talk about North Korea, the misconceptions about North Korea, things like that. And a lot of, what North Koreans are suffering from is really these sanctions and blockades and things like that from the West, particularly the United States. It's the same thing with Venezuela, with Cuba. A lot of these countries are constantly facing financial, geopolitical infiltration or meddling from the West, because the West does not want to see any type of socialist country that is successful. Unfortunately, China now is proving the United States wrong, the People's Republic of China. And unfortunately for the United States, people are going to start looking at China and going, why can't we be more like them once they become number one? Right now, they're number two. They're going to take the number one spot probably within the next 5 to 10 years. If Professor Richard Wolff's estimations are correct. And so that's what I see. And so to be honest with you, yeah, I'm hoping they do. Because the thing is like, we need to see a better system. And if we can see somebody else doing better, doing economics better than we can from a people-powered government, then that will influence more people to change our government to copy a more egalitarian system. Because this is why they tried to get rid of the Soviet Union. This is why they were so successful, because they tried to make it seem, well, we have a better system. When in reality, they didn't really have a better system. We were just better at sabotaging it. And now the United States is trying to sabotage China, the same way they sabotaged the Soviet Union, but it's not working because history, those who study history are not doomed to repeat it. And China looked at the history and they saw exactly what the United States did. And China's like, no, you don't. You're not doing that to us. And so now, yeah. And of course, I'm hoping that, this comes to this, I'm hoping when it comes geopolitically that countries like Venezuela, DPRK, and Cuba, I'm hoping that they can join BRICS, especially because I would like to see them circumvent the blockades and the sanctions that the West have been imposing on them. Because if they do, then watch them grow. Because the West has been holding them back because the West can't handle them being successful. It reminds me of, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name, but he was an activist in Grenada. And one of the things that he said was, if Grenada became socialist, it would be spelled doom for the United States, because Grenada is an English-speaking country. It is a Black English-speaking country. And if they're able to communicate with us directly, it would be doomed for them, because then we will be able to, speak the ideas. They're already pissed that Cuba is socialist, because you have because you speak Spanish, you can communicate with Cubans from Cuba. This is why they want to keep them cut off. This is why they want to keep North Korea cut off, because they don't really want you to communicate with North Koreans about their system. So it's just interesting. But thank you very much for the comment. Sorry, I was rambling on. Let me see. Asaraptus says they don't care about them people losing money. It only serves their intentions of having people at their mercy. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the system that we have. Yeah. Colin says 1 in 5 in the US are chronically lonely and don't have one close friend. And this makes me sad, because we literally live in a system where isolation is what's being pushed on us. I truly do think if we get ourselves into a more egalitarian system, the feeling of loneliness will go down, because really it is about being a community, more collective. And that will also help our mental health as well. Like, for instance, did you know that people who are elderly, when they're more around young people, especially like children, toddlers, children, adolescents, teenagers, the rate of dementia and Alzheimer's, things like that, actually slows. And being around young people actually helps keep them going. This is why, having that communal or village type of life is actually more beneficial for us. This is why having a more egalitarian life benefits us all. But it keeps people together. And when people get together and they start talking to each other, they develop systems that are not that are the opposite of exploitation. They're mutually beneficial, which is not good for the corporations. So good to see you, Cowboy Kitty. Nice to have you in the chat. Hippie Punk says, my commie ass would love to be your employee, worker, owner. I help form a union at my workplace, but we are in different states. Yeah. Shoot, I put in an application if I could. If I lived out in California, near her, I'll put out an application. All right. Tim from RBN Orlando chapter says, good times. Yeah, good times, Tim. Good times. Nice to have you in here. Thank you very much, Radical Education. What game are you playing? I'm thinking about playing some Marvel vs. Capcom too. And then Rick Solis says, I was making tacos. Oh, I want tacos right now. CWO2 says, I will rewatch as I missed most of her business model, but I enjoyed what I heard. Yeah, you're going to feel wholesome listening to that. You're going to feel really, it's going to be the equivalent of fresh baked cookies and a glass of cold milk. That's what you're going to feel. Cowboy Kitty. Oh, put Rome's fundraiser in the chat. Yeah, I got you. Thank you very much, Cowboy Kitty. Sheila B said, you don't have to apologize. No need to apologize at all. I'm just happy and thankful that you're watching. Thank you so very much. All right. The Tunneling Jew. What the name is that? Love to you too. Love to you, the Tunneling Jew. Yeah. I have love for the people who are, who support anybody who is pushing for liberation of all marginalized people around the world. So yeah, and please continue to, if you know somebody that's supporting somebody who, who are marginalized, for instance, people, who are against the genocide that's going on in occupied Palestine, people who are supporting those of us who are Black people here that are going through, a lot, especially in regards to white supremacy, racism. Some people may not agree with me, but that's okay. Rome wasn't built in a day. But the people who, are going through a lot, who are marginalized, people who are non-binary, trans, people who are disabled. There's a lot of us that are going through a lot, especially during this time of the year, because a lot of people are sad during the holidays. So please make sure to just be kind to them, or just anybody that that may be going through a tough time. You never know what a smile or just a kind word could do for people. Just think about others, and yes, absolutely. Thank you. Pay it forward. because there's a lot of people that are going through a lot right now. Christmas is in 19 days, and some of us have lost family. Some of us are in the process of losing family. Some of us have lost some friends. Some of us may have suffered a breakup. Some of us may have lost a job. Some of us are still losing family. Some of us are going through depressive episodes. Some of us are lonely. So just continuously, keep your mind on being good to others, but also be good to yourself too, because you're also part of your community. Remember that. Let me also share Rome's fundraiser. Rome is still locked up. So please make sure to, if you can, if you're able to. He's, of course, raising funds for his lawyer, which we were able to do, but we're also, whatever extra is going to his books, make sure he's okay. I just want people to remember that also, the phone calls cost money out of there. The supplies for paper and pencils to be able to write letters. They charge for everything in these jails. They charge for toiletries, soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and all this other stuff. I'm gonna be real with you, as somebody that's had family in incarcerated. The food is horrible. Horrible. I'm not talking about just like a preference thing. No. It is barely edible, and it's disgusting. And the only actual really good edible food they have is the food that they actually get in commissary. And so, in order for him to actually be able to truly like eat and sustain himself, this is why I share it as well, because I know what it's like to have a family member incarcerated. So do what you can to help him there too as well. Okay. If you can. If you can't do it any financially, then just share, because he's been doing work on the ground and helping people, and I would like for people to turn around and pay it forward back to him. So thank you very much for that. Also, just to let you guys know, I'm also raising money for our mutual aid. We're going to be trying to do mutual aid for the community here in Orlando. I want to try in January, but it might be February. So we'll see about. And as far as a goal, we don't have one just yet. We have to meet to do that, but I'm just trying to do preemptively to raise as much as we possibly can to do that. So if you guys can, we can also raise funds for that, especially for this time of year, because it's colder, and a lot of people who are, we live in Florida, and unfortunately, a lot of these, politicians, they really don't care. They'll send out a turkey. They'll put some stuffing on a plate and hand it to them and say, I did my good deed for the day. And it's like, no. We got to do way more than that. We got to actually provide, for our communities and do what our government won't do, which is actually be good to our fellow neighbors. So one thing I wanted to talk about before we get head on out is, actually, let me grab it here. As you all know, I am have been on dialysis for 16 and a half years now. And one of the things that I got the go ahead from is that people can now, because I'm working on trying to get on the list for kidney transplant, is if you would like to get tested to see if you're a potential donor, you can. This can be done throughout the United States. You do not have to live near me. And as far as cost, my insurance will pay for anyone who gets tested to get, their screening in order to get, if they are wishing to donate. Now, here's my thing. Organ donation is it's a big thing. So I want you to think about it deeply before you even make the decision to even try to see if you qualify, if we're a match. Okay. But even if we're not a match, you could be a match for somebody. All right. There's over 100,000, I think it's over 109,000 people throughout the United States that are waiting for organ transplants. Almost 90,000 of them are waiting for kidneys alone. So most organ transplant recipients are kidney recipients. And so it is a huge amount of people that are in need, especially if you have more of a rare blood types. Those people are in need. If at all, you can help them out. If you have the wherewithal to help them out, you can. But yes, that's what I'm doing. Trying to become the healthiest version of myself so that I can do more on the ground and be the best version of myself so that I can help my community more. So let me put in the link so that you guys, if you guys would like to, see about becoming a donor, then you guys can. So I'll link it in the comments afterwards. But this is it, tgh.org/living kidney donor. So if you guys would like to, then you guys have that there as well. But yes, so I'm hoping that I'll get approved. I have one more imaging that I need to do. And then once the imaging is good, and if I'm cleared by the board, then I can get on the list. And it's healthier. The duration of life for a donor kidney from a living donor actually lasts longer than one from a deceased donor. And so it's actually better quality of life for me to get a living donor versus a deceased. But this is why I'm going the living donor route first. And so, so that's what I'm basically doing. I also shared it on Twitter as well. If you guys would like to, I also shared the QR code as well, if you guys would like to check and see. But yes, so that's what's going on now. And hopefully once I get a kidney transplant, then you guys will see a more improved JB. So I'm excited. Yeah, definitely. Cream pie ninja. I love my audience. Be a good person in the face of atrocities. Absolutely. That was beautifully said. Thank you so very much. Oh man, I appreciate it. You guys are awesome, man. I love my community. You guys are great. Yeah, free dialysis for all. Actually, some of you guys are dialyzing right now. You just don't realize it. That's what your kiddies do. But with that being said, I'm going to head on out. I actually went on longer than I wanted to. But yeah, I wanted to get into that. And then stay tuned for tomorrow. I will be having on Richie Medhurst. It's going to be great. It's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Vienna time. So it's going to be a great conversation where we're talking about puppetry by, Ukraine, Israel, the United States, and we're going to be talking about that. So it's going to be a great conversation. It's always great to have Richard on. Let me take this down because I think that's good. And did I? And by the way, books. So if you guys have not already, you guys can always tune in. I'll be giving a reading of Presidential by Margaret Kimberly, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, and then A Water in the Spirit by Melodoma Soe. We'll be getting into those. I'll be trying to get into those as soon as possible so we can I'm trying to be consistent with that. So we shall see. So yeah. And am I forgetting anything? Oh, and stay tuned for the JB show on RBN this Sunday. It's going to be a very busy weekend for me, but that's what it's all about. Anywho, with that being said, I'm going to head on out, everybody. Any final words? Yep. Sheila B says, get Rome, love, and forehead kisses for us, JB. Definitely. Thank you so very much. All right, everybody. Oh, and let me check the Rockman just one more time before I head on out. So I think I saw a couple more new chats. A little white kid. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I forgot. Why don't they combine daycare with old folks home? That would be actually interesting. I think that would be actually a great thing. Said I had a friend whose mom was from Thailand say about how she was so cold to leave the elderly at homes. Yeah, I definitely agree. JB got wordsmith game and joke game. No, I'm not that good. You give me way too much credit. Thank you for the tip. Himcar says, check out the UN document from High Commission. They even admit voice to skull is real. What? Surveillance profiles are being built to identify any and all weaknesses and insecurity to be used later. Information also often obtained through sexual partners or trusted people in their lives. Conditioning where victims are sensitized to certain stimuli, such as everywhere you go, someone will cough as they walk past you. The goal is to make you self-police and think anyone who coughs is involved in harassment. People report the conditioning to include hand gestures and overt use of color in people's clothing, like everyone you see wearing red or cars, certain color with headlights on, also known as brightening. What? What's this? Harassment techniques. Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse where someone will actively try to undermine victims and make them doubt themselves so that they lose all self-confidence and self-esteem and are therefore easier to manipulate and push towards a mental health pathway. It could be as simple as being told someone which they then deny, then telling them how silly they are for thinking they said it, and in turn then lie around into an attack on the person. it can be incredibly effective coming from a trusted person and before the victim understands what is happening to them. This is interesting, Hemp Car. I'm gonna share this into the chat because I really do think that the system does stuff like this too. They will do this on a mass scale. Thank you very much for that, Hemp Car. Huh. Yeah, I don't trust these cappies as far as I can throw them. The FBI created indexes more commonly called enemy lists thousands of Americans and targeted many of the Americans on these lists for special harassment. Huh. Hemp Car, this shit is too deep for me right now. You be thinking, and you're very cerebral, and I am nowhere near that. Said Mumia said it's more like tens of thousands of millions on lists. And then it says I'm paid positive, but I hate giving blood. I know. No, thank you very much. Man. Whew. Yeah, you're definitely cerebral. I got to be more like you. Thank you very much for that, Hemp Car. Appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to head on out. We give you some tacos and go to bed. Because that's what it's about. I hope you guys have yourself a great night. Sorry if I'm a little subdued, but dialysis does that to me. Look, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Thank you so very much. And Madeline Pendleton join me on this beautiful stream on a Friday evening. Hope you guys have yourself a wonderful evening. Mwah! I'll see you guys tomorrow with Richard Medhurst joining me on the channel. It's going to be great. It's going to be good. It's going to be cool. And let me know if you had some hummus over the weekend in honor of our beautiful Arab brothers and sisters. Or if you want to honor our Black brothers and sisters, get some mac and cheese. You know what I'm saying? That's the good stuff. Anywho, now I'm in the mood for mac and cheese. Dang it. Take care, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.